Imagine waking up tomorrow and finding out that your bank account is worth 30% less. Not because you spent the money, but because the world decided that the piece of paper in your wallet just isn't that special anymore. For 80 years, the United States had a cheat code for the global economy. We could print money, run massive debts, and sanction anyone we didn't like. Why? Because we owned the oceans. We were the world's bodyguard. But in 2026, the bodyguard just walked off the job. And the consequences? They're starting in a place most Americans can't find. On a map, the Orinoco Belt of Venezuela, the recent U.S. operation to stabilize Venezuela was sold to us as a win for democracy, a win for gas prices. But behind the scenes, it has triggered a geopolitical backfire that is currently dismantling the American century. Today, we're not talking about politics. We're talking about the end of the world as you know it. Let's get one thing straight. Washington didn't just wake up one day and decide they cared about Venezuelan democracy. This was a cold, calculated move. We call it energy realism. In 2026, the world is starving for heavy crude oil, the thick, dirty stuff that's actually the backbone of global infrastructure. You can't make jet fuel or high-grade asphalt from the light, sweet crude we pump in Texas. For that, you need Venezuela. So the plan was simple. Neutralize the regime, put in a U.S.-friendly administration, and open the floodgates of the world's largest oil reserves. On paper, it was a masterpiece. In reality, it was a trap we set for ourselves. Here's the part the mainstream news didn't tell you. When the U.S. Navy blockaded Venezuelan ports, they expected the global oil price to spike and China to panic. Instead, something eerie happened. The price stayed stable. Why? Because of the shadow fleet. Right now, hundreds of aging tankers are sailing the oceans with their transponders turned off. These ghost ships became the lifeline for the Venezuelan regime. But they weren't just selling to anyone, they were selling to the teapots. In China's Shandong province, there are hundreds of independent refineries known as teapots. These guys don't care about U.S. sanctions. They don't use the SWIFT banking system. They don't deal in dollars. When we blocked Venezuela's official exports, the teapots just bought it at a massive discount, sometimes 40% below the market price. So, while you and I were paying record prices at the pump, Chinese factories were getting subsidized energy because of our sanctions. We essentially gave our biggest economic rival a VIP discount on the world's most important resource. And it gets worse. By forcing Venezuela out of the legal market, we created a vacuum. Who filled it? Iran. Tehran saw an opportunity to practice their own sanctions evasion techniques. They started blending their oil with Venezuelan crude on the high seas. Think about the irony here. The U.S. spends trillions to contain Iran. Then we execute an operation in Venezuela that inadvertently hands Iran a multi-billion-dollar revenue stream. We tried to cut off a finger in South America, and we accidentally fed a monster in the Middle East. This is the Venezuela Trap. We used a 20th century hammer on a 21st century problem. We assumed that because we are the biggest economy, we could simply delete a country from the map. But in a multipolar world, there is always a workaround. And the scariest part? The workaround is becoming more efficient than the original system. If you want to understand power in 2026, forget about tanks for a second. Let's talk about the God view. For decades, the U.S. Treasury had a God view of the global economy. Because almost every international trade had to pass through a U.S. bank, Washington could see everything. And if they didn't like you, they just hit delete. But as we sit here today, the screen is going dark. The God view is failing. And it's because of something called the mBridge phenomenon. While we were focused on Venezuela, a group of central banks quietly launched mBridge. In the old world, sending money from Dubai to Shanghai took 5 days and went through New York. In 2026, through mBridge, that same transaction happens in 15 seconds. It never touches a U.S. bank. No dollars. No SWIFT. No oversight. For the first time in 80 years, the world has a backdoor to global trade that the U.S. government can't lock. Now combine that with the digital yuan. It's no longer just a cash substitute. It's a programmable asset. When Venezuela sells oil to China today, they get a digital token that can only be spent on Chinese infrastructure or Russian grain. It's a closed-loop economy. To the U.S. Treasury, this trade is invisible. It's a ghost transaction. We are seeing a world where our sanctions are becoming about as effective as a no smoking sign in a house on fire. We did this. By weaponizing the dollar so aggressively, we gave the rest of the world a reason to leave. We told them, use the dollar, but only if you do what we say. Their response was, okay, we'll just stop using the dollar. This isn't just about high-level finance. It's about the cost of your debt. If the world doesn't need dollars to buy oil anymore, they don't need to buy our treasury bonds. And if they don't buy our bonds, your mortgage, your car loan, your credit card, it all gets more expensive. While the bureaucrats in D.C. are busy, the American heartland is fracturing. In 2026, the America First dream is hitting a wall of math. We wanted to bring manufacturing back, but we realized our lifestyle was subsidized by the very global system. We are now tearing down. For decades, we imported cheap stuff from countries with cheap labor. But as the U.S. Navy pulls back from protecting global shipping lanes, the free ride is over. Your grocery bill isn't high because of greed alone. It's high because the world is no longer one big happy market. The plan was to reshore everything. But you can't build a factory without raw minerals. While we were blockading oil, China was signing exclusive deals for lithium and cobalt. We are trying to build the cars of the future, but we forgot to secure the ingredients for the batteries. American-made tech is now 40% more expensive. We've built a fortress America, but the walls are so high we can't afford to live inside them. This economic friction is creating a political earthquake. We have a generation that grew up in a globalized world, now being told the world is closed. We are no longer a united country. We are a nation divided by a single question. Is it better to be a poor empire or a rich republic? The Venezuela backfire proved that you cannot be an isolationist superpower. It's a contradiction in terms. In Greek mythology, Atlas was condemned to hold up the heavens. For 80 years, the United States was our modern-day Atlas. But Atlas is tired. Atlas is dropping the world. We are entering an era of regional hegemons. Instead of one global cop, we have neighborhood bullies. Brazil in the south, India in the Indian Ocean, China in the Pacific. The era of cheap everything is officially in the rearview mirror. But humans are adaptable. As the old systems fail, we are seeing the localization of power. Communities are building their own grids. Investors are moving into real wealth, land, energy, and minerals. The sanctions backfire was a wake-up call. It forced us to realize that we can't control 8 billion people with a printing press anymore. If you're watching this, your life is about to get more local. The geopolitical ghost economy means your government has less power abroad, which might mean they have to pay more attention to you at home. But the safety net of the dollar is thinning. America isn't dying. It's just becoming a normal country again. And for a nation that has been a superpower for its entire living memory, normal is going to feel like a crisis. The question is, when the world finally stops looking to Washington for the answers, where will you be looking?